game I was working tonight, the Warriors broke a franchise record for most points scored in a half against the Kings. Sacramento 0-3. Go Kings.
So the Kings are staying bad. The Kings know where they belong in the Western Conference. I don't think the Lakers have quite bought into what they are, their identity as a team in the 2022-2023 basketball season. There's a lot of teams that might have a bit of an identity crisis as far as what they are this season. I think Utah qualifies as one of them. They're 3-0. They just beat the Pelicans, so I think the Pelicans will be one of those teams vying for a playoff spot. I don't know if I could see this Lakers team vying for a playoff spot. They are legitimately bad. I thought they were play-in tournament good, but now I have legitimate questions if they're even that. Dame just put up 40 on them. All those issues that we were talking about with Westbrook and Anthony Davis's health and this team construction, we were right to have those discussions. Every person in sports media was right to question this team construction because it's awful. It's terrible. It's legitimately bad.
Yeah, no, I'm going to try and talk around this without going too far and being like, the Jazz are better than the Lakers, because like Utah doesn't want to win and the Lakers want to win. And that usually makes a bit of a difference in terms of like, which team is better? The one whose organization is trying to win or not trying to win.
No, I know it's a team game, but how can you be this bad when you have LeBron James still, averaging close to 30, Anthony Davis, who's in theory is a player in his prime, Russell Westbrook, a future Hall of Famer, you still are this bad? The Utah Jazz roster that tore everything down.
We say that, but like Utah got kind of too much talent on that team. Like, I mean, no one thought Lauri Markkanen would be averaging like 28 points a game. Like, that one's just stupid. But like, dude, Colin Sexton's coming off the bench on this team. Like, Utah has too much talent, and somehow it's put together in a way that's won a few games.
Conley, Vanderbilt's made shots for them. Yeah, it's so crazy.
Kelly Olynyk had 28 points. Kelly freaking Olynyk. Anyway, like Utah, I say that they have too much talent. They have too much talent to be a like awful team. Even though organizationally that might be the direction, although we haven't gotten really confirmation from the moves that they made that was the goal.
Is Utah just a franchise? And we talked about with Utah because a couple of years ago, we thought that there was a potential title window when Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert were really peaking. Are they an organization? I talked about baseball, how with the Los Angeles Angels being stuck on a treadmill. Are they kind of like NBA hell in the sense that they tease their fans by their constant ability to rebuild and restart this team from scratch? Because who knows? We're saying, man, this 3-0 start to the season could be an aberration. But what if we look at the end of the season and we're thinking to ourselves, oh, wow, did they actually build a good old roster? Because that's kind of what happened when they first got Donovan Mitchell. People were looking at that team as a team that was going to be bad, and they end up making the playoffs. Could this be another round of Utah Jazz proper front office maneuvering?
So whenever we talk about the Utah Jazz, it's always important to talk about it within the context of this fact. Almost nobody wants to play in Utah. Utah is the 30th out of 30 markets in terms of people try to actively avoid Utah. In fact, a radio host in Utah, and this is one of my quotes that I bring up all the time, gave away Salt Lake City is difficult to live in, from what I hear in terms of context of like being a 25-year-old basketball player living in Salt Lake City. A radio host in Utah brought up this point, which is when Gordon Hayward left, they're like, if white American basketball players don't want to stay in Utah, what are our chances of competing with the grander scheme of NBA players? And what was so interesting about Utah is they had Rudy Gobert, a player who wanted to play in Utah and played there for a decade at a high level, and they actively traded him before he wanted to go. They did the same thing with Darren Williams, although Darren Williams didn't really want to stay. Darren Williams got traded with years left on his contract years ago. And the great testament to Utah is the fact they've gone 15 years without tanking. Like, the highest draft pick Utah has had in the last 15 years is, I think, pick number 9 in the draft. Utah has done a really good job of being competitive for all these years.
I kind of wonder. So Danny Ainge, obviously he brought over Will Hardy from the Celtics whenever he moved on over to Utah. Or at least when they're going through their head coaching search after Quinn Snyder got fired. I kind of wonder if they're going through a similar type thing back whenever Brad was hired, because the Celtics never really tanked. They kind of just rode that Brooklyn Nets trade to being able to get themselves back into being a contender. I kind of wonder if Will Hardy brought a little bit of that Boston Celtics mentality in terms of being able to keep this team viable despite not having necessarily superstar talent on it.
Well, I think what's different about tanking teams, I just think when it came to Utah, we just got so infatuated with like, well, they're trading Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, so clearly they're trying to get the number one pick. But it's not that easy to really tear a team down in that way. Like when Houston did it, Houston tore that thing to the bare bones. Like they put a G League team out there for the past 2 seasons when they were tearing that thing to the ground. Oklahoma City, they stripped that thing down to like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and just G League players and players on the fringes of the NBA. You can go through Utah's roster and be like, they've got like 7 solid NBA players. Like Mike Conley's not the same player he once was. He's good. Jordan Clarkson, Lauri Markkanen, guys who, again, they won't make the playoffs, but they'll still be stable.
So I guess this goes back to the major overlying point of this video. Are the Utah Jazz better than the Lakers?
See, I'm not going to answer that question because that's clickbait, and you're trying to bait me into saying yes.
I am trying to bait you. Do it for the people that clicked on this video, Kyle. Give me your answer.
I'm going to say the organization that actively wants to win and also has LeBron James is probably better than the Utah Jazz, even if the evidence is going against that. And it drives me absolutely insane that it's the fact, because how are the Lakers this bad at basketball? Seriously, how is that possible that they are this bad at basketball?
I think the obvious answer is guys like Juan Toscano-Anderson, Lonnie Walker are legitimate players on this roster in terms of minutes and in terms of their impact on the court or lack thereof of impact on the court, because these are guys that necessarily would be starting for other teams. You mentioned, at least with the Utah Jazz, you can point to a couple pieces on this team and say, okay, that makes sense. Mike Conley, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, these are starters. I think we're starting to get to the point where it's like, well, maybe they don't have the best 2 players on the court when we compare these 2 teams, but when we start comparing the 3 through 5, the 3 through 8 on the rosters, it's starting to look in the Utah Jazz's favor. I don't think you can just win off the old super team model anymore. You do need some depth, and I think the Warriors proved that. I think the Warriors proved that because they had those pieces they already had on the team, sure, but their ability to build out that roster behind them is what made them a championship contender.
It's true, but the Warriors also are an aberration because they spent $130 million on Andrew Wiggins at the
Brooklyn Nets. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets are a better constructed team. That's why I thought they were better than the Lakers last year, but they weren't be able to get carried in the same way by Kyrie and KD, I think is a thing that points to that. And the same way this Lakers team, they can't be carried by AD or LeBron. Even that said, LeBron's probably the only one that's doing any actual carrying. AD has been a shell of the player that he was, and he's not as impactful in the game.
That one might be a byproduct of those guys are just kind of older now, so it's harder for them to carry. Like, I think Giannis is a superstar
Davis
model
is
that's
28,
carrying them.
Right?
Well, yeah, I guess I was thinking of LeBron and KD and Kyrie more than I guess Anthony Davis, but Anthony Davis got them street clothes injuries that've been going on. I guess I'm thinking like Giannis is the superstar, is the stars. Like Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton make up more than the luxury tax threshold for the Bucks. Like Milwaukee is in that camp, but like Giannis is in his prime, so like they're obviously better. Like Jokic is in his prime, so obviously they're so much better than the teams that are flopping with the superstar model.
And Anthony Davis, here's the problem: is he should be in his prime. I know that he has the street clothes injuries, but at a certain point, the Lakers, that doesn't help them. That excuse doesn't help them change the course of their franchise. They can't do anything with that, you know?
Here's why I hate the clickbait version of this is that it's the Lakers point, and I'm like, that's a stretch too far. Now, if you made this video, are the Utah Jazz better than the Sacramento Kings? Then we could start to have a legitimate argument about this, or a legitimate conversation.
Because, listen, the Lakers could end up in the same position as the Jazz, not in the postseason. That's why this conversation is important to have. If they're both not in the postseason, they're basically the same team. You talk about tiers. I know you prefer tiers over regular rankings. Well, tiers would suggest this Lakers team, if they're not worse than the Utah Jazz, they're at least on their same tier. they're about the same team, except one team at least has 3 wins. The other team has 3 losses through 3 games.
For the Lakers to be on the same tier, you just have to remove one of the pieces. So you'd have to remove either LeBron or Anthony Davis for them to fall to possibly that tier with Sacramento. And
no,
well,
because,
I guess,
dude, just look beyond Anthony Davis and LeBron. Just look how bad this roster is. Besides those
it's
two
so
guys.
hard to do that. It's so hard to do that when LeBron and Anthony
when we're
Davis.
talking about G Leaguers playing behind those guys, we have to be honest about what the Lakers are. They're a G League team with 2 really talented pieces on it.
Yeah. Or at the very least, they're a tanking team with 2 great players and a roster. I mean, I'm not going to just dismiss Russell Westbrook altogether, even though he went 0 for 11 on opening night.
But Russell Westbrook is an enigma in this league because the bad teams don't want him because he makes them slightly better, and the good teams don't want him because he makes them worse.
And he has
Russell Westbrook
for $44 million. For $44 million, nobody wants him. If you make his contract $6 million, you're going to have teams lining up to sign him.
I know Westbrook has been the unfortunate scapegoat in this entire experiment, but at the same time, you have to do something to help yourself. And the fact that he's struggling to even make buckets, they don't have any answers on this
team.
The
Lakers are bad. The Lakers are bad. I'm not saying that the Lakers are good. I'm saying, God, not Utah, right? It can't be Utah. It can't be that far. Because like the Lakers have played the Clippers and Warriors. They were supposed to lose those games, whatever. Like
I know, but
maybe they should have beat Portland, but they were beating Portland until Dame hit a game-winning 3. Like you can explain that away, and it's just 3 games. The Sam Hinkie 76ers started 3-0. Like basketball, small sample sizes. Like it doesn't matter. But
through the 3 games, okay, so you can understand the Lakers losing the Warriors. That's fine. The Warriors are going to be a 50-plus win team, but they lost to the Trailblazers, who have Dame and not a whole lot else. Then I'm looking at the rest of their schedule here. So obviously they lost to the Clippers too in game 2. Next game up, they get the Nuggets, they get the T-Wolves, they get the Nuggets again. They got the Jazz, like I said, coming up 2 games. They could be in a point where we're looking at them through 10 games, and they're like 2-8. And if we're looking at a 2-8 Lakers team, it's just hard to give them a nudge over teams that, I don't know, at least if let's say Utah starts 6-5, I would take the 6-5 Utah Jazz over the 2-8 Lakers if we get to that point, especially if we start seeing head-to-head victories, which may be coming soon.
I will answer this. Like to start the season, I thought that the Lakers, Portland, and the Kings were the teams that were above the tanking tier because it was San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Utah would be the teams that clearly were not going to make the playoffs in the West. And then Portland, the Lakers, Sacramento would be fighting for those play-in spots, which means a lot more to Sacramento than it does to Portland and Los Angeles, given their whole history of the last 16 years. So if this is going to be the case where Utah and the Lakers are about the same, it's not going to be, unless LeBron and Anthony Davis get hurt, it's not going to be the Lakers becoming a tanking team. It's going to be Utah being better than we expected, which again, we didn't have the conversation about what was coming in for Utah. We just said, well, if you subtract Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell for packages that involve mostly draft picks, surely they're going to be a worse team. And that's correct. But what we're talking about here is 5th in the West down to what? Is it 12th? Is it 13th? Is it 14th? We didn't really have that conversation. We're just like, well, they're clearly trying to get Wembanyama, when we just kind of chalked it up as like, well, when you trade your 2-star players, you're clearly trying to be bad. But how bad does Utah want to be? This is where you can insert the Brian Windhorst meme of how bad are they actually trying to be, given that they actually have a group of NBA players, which is something that can't be said for the San Antonio Spurs or the Lakers.
Man, this is a rough start for you Lakers fans. I don't know how you're getting through it through this early part of the season. I don't see it getting better for you, but maybe you do. Maybe you disagree with our early assertions here. Go ahead and drop below in the comment section, get involved. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us wherever you can find us. Follow us on social media. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you on the next one.